So we're going live. I'm not sure when people are going to hook into the system. Yeah, so if you're watching the replay, just give it about 20, 30 seconds and the main presentation should begin because this is live. So I'm waiting for people to log in to see the stream. I'm a little late. I should have started this around 2 o'clock, but I had to get a coffee. So what can you do? All right. All right, we got people there. I hope everybody's well. According to my statistics, we got about 12 people. Hey, what's up, Shady? Hello, Nicola. Fizz007. All right, hello from North Korea. Kofed. What's up? What's up? Okay, so of course, as soon as I start the live stream, people upstairs are renovating. Fantastic. Yeah. Hey, Harish from India. Fantastic. What time is it in India right now? I'm just curious. It must be like almost the reverse, right? It must be like 2 a.m. Hi from nowhere, literally. All right. So what about C++, huh? Yeah. I'm just going to cover that quickly just based on an article I read. There's obviously a broader context to the article as typical for me. So there's going to be 2 parts to this, well, 3 parts. I'm going to talk about the C++, is it going to fork, what's going on there, and how it impacts the philosophy of coding. Number 2, we're going to look at how we can apply code, C-O-D-E, debugging skills, and how they could use those basic strategies to debug the virus, the coronavirus. Again, it's just a nerd's view of this. Don't take it for anything more than that, but I thought it'd be interesting. It'd be an interesting way to look at interesting way to look at basic debugging strategies. You'll see that it's kind of universal to all problem solving. By the way, that's a big part of just writing code, is just being a problem solver, you know. Let's see, I'm going to control my exposure here. Okay, there we go. All right, so how many people we have on? We have 48 people. So what I'm going to do now is just jump into the whole C++ thing. And then from there, we will get into the other sections. Greetings, everybody. So I found this kind of interesting. So I have this article here about, well, I'll just read it. C++ proposal dismiss backwards compatibility. Proposal to the C++ standard committee would give up backward and binary compatibility for safety and simplicity. So I'm just going to read a paragraph, and then I'm going to give you my 2 cents on this. You'll see why in a moment. Hello, Gene. All right, so I'll start right here. A working group of the C++ Language Standards Committee has voted a proposal to evolve the language with an emphasis on safety and simplicity rather than backward and binary compatibility, raising the question of whether the language could fork. So let's discuss this. You see, every so often in a technology, they have to make a choice between supporting the old versions, already deployed apps, versus starting fresh, starting anew in favor of future better apps. So in the Python world, they did that. When they went from the 2x branch, Python 2, 2x means Python 2.1, 2.2, etc. When they went from Python 2 to Python 3, it was a rewrite. Why? Because there was fundamental issues with Python 2 that they wanted to rectify, they wanted to take care of. So they said, okay, we're going to come up with a brand new Python 3. And in fact, they were not compatible. You could not run your Python 2 code base on Python 3. So there was conversion scripts and stuff, but you still had to convert it. So you see that every so often where they do that. In terms of operating systems, the most famous I can think of is Mac OS. When Mac OS went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 9, which I think it was Pascal based, the language was Pascal. And Steve Jobs said, okay, we got to move to a new operating system. So they basically built something from scratch. OS X, OS 10 is built from scratch. It's off of FreeBSD. a brand new code base, a brand new version. So they had to make that decision to break between the old code base and the new. So in the C++ world, what they're looking at here is one of the main things that's always is glaring to me is that one of the main reasons is simplicity. Now, I'm not a professional C++ coder. I hardly written any C++ code. I've learned a little bit of it, and I can tell you though from people I know who are big into C++, they tell me it's pretty wild out there. So I think that they're looking at the medium and long term in terms of the viability of the language. They want to simplify it, and they want to see if they can find a way to make it competitive in terms of write time versus other modern languages. So I think that's what's going on there. So we'll just read a little bit more. Top priority for the authors is runtime performance. As far as backward or forward compatibility go, the authors advocate for the ability to migrate from one version to C++ to another rather than compatibility between them. This preference is rooted in their experience with evolving software over time, more generally, and a live-at-head model. Another non-goal was support for existing compilation linking models, which the author would be willing to change to achieve their goals. Anyway, so I'm not going to get into all the details. The broader point I want to bring up this whole C++ thing is that they're now looking at it at a fundamental level to say, okay, we're willing to potentially fork C++, and we're willing to leave old ideas behind to come up with something a little bit more modern, as they did with Python. And as you've seen, like for example, in a non-programming language, but in a coding language, when they broke from XHTML several years ago and decided to go with the HTML5 standard. So there you go. That's my little take on C++. And you can see the same basic ideas and trends that we've seen in other languages and frameworks and operating systems. We see it's starting to come into the C++ world. So I hope that makes any sense. Any questions in that regard before I go on to the next thing? Let me know. Let me increase my exposure now a little bit. All right. So let's see what we got here. Actually, Apple acquired Next, which was Steve Jobs' company. And with that, they got NextOS, which is the basis of OS X, which was the foundation of OS X, okay, and iOS for that matter. This is true, which is based on FreeBSD. So let's see. Mohammed, so how do you pronounce Mishuk? It's well, we pronounce it Mishchuk, but that's not really the original Ukrainian form. The Ukrainian form is Mishuk, but we always say Mishchuk. Galbard says, love from Dubai, love back from Canada. Hire me for a summer job. I'm all booked up. Sorry, guys. Okay. How is the situation in Canada for a web developer who wants to get a contract and migrate to Canada? There's a lot of opportunity. If you speak French, then you can do Quebec. If you don't speak French, then you have to look outside of Quebec, because Quebec is largely a French-spoken language. What was it? What was the initial motivation for C++? I would have to look that up. I remember reading about it. I believe it was just to add an object-oriented layer to it. That's all. They wanted to make it object-oriented. I'm sure there's other reasons, but that's the big difference that I'm aware of anyway. Hi, Steph. Imagine you have 100K. What would you do with it? Do you think hiring developers and creating a corp would be wise, or 100K is not enough? Would you suggest an alternative? Thank you. 100K in the West is not enough. It depends. I talk about this in my entrepreneur course versus raising money, getting outside money versus bootstrapping or putting in your own money. If you have a fixed budget of 100K, that would just be enough for you. And you would have to do the development, because hiring developers, it is not cheap. It is not cheap. All right, Elliot. Do you speak French? Bien sûr, je parle français, mais c'est pas souvent que je parle français. Ça veut dire que y a des fois que j'oublie des mots. And I said, right there, I said it's not often, but I speak French, so there are times I forget the words. Here's a good one. Psychology question. Can a right brain oriented person be a programmer? Yes, that's me. Well, I'm actually middle brained apparently. But anyway, someone who has a sense of aesthetics, a visionary, interested in the bigger picture more than details can be a good programmer. Yeah, you would probably be somebody who's into architecture, somebody who would handle the front end, the usability, UX, UI. Sure, why not? That's where I would go. What if you speak both very well? Do you have any pointers? I would just start reaching out to companies that are interesting to you, and then start also looking at the cities. You know, you might prefer living in Montreal versus Quebec City, or you might prefer Toronto. You might prefer Vancouver, BC, or Edmonton. These are all cities in Canada. So I would look at the locations, see which one would appeal to the lifestyle that you kind of find interesting. And then I would then look at job opportunities there. Those are the steps that I would take. So how long we should wait for C++ to evolve? Well, this is merely a proposal, the C++ thing. So I would be, proposals. It's just that it may take forever. It may never happen. To me, the only reason I brought it up is to show you how you see this evolution of technology. One of the things I try to do, and what I suggest people do, is you try to look for patterns, consistent patterns in how things happen, how things evolve. So, for example, when Bitcoin was at its all-time high, 17, 18,000, I have videos on YouTube. I was saying, I wouldn't buy now. Based on my experience of how I've seen markets, chances are it's not going to go too well from here. And sure enough, I don't know where that's at now. It's below 10,000 last time I checked. And it's not a shot on Bitcoin per se. It is just understanding, having experienced meteoric rises in particular asset classes. Asset class could be a house, could be oil, could be Bitcoin, could be good, could be debt markets, etc. I just seen whenever you see a big whoosh, and lots of hypes on TV, and the shoe shine boy and the pizza delivery guy is buying Bitcoins, and you're like, oh boy, it's time to get out. That's just a basic experience, something I've seen over the years. All right, so how long does it take to learn C++? Well, to be productive, depends. You know, you can learn C++ in 5 minutes, learn the very basics, but doesn't mean you'll be able to do anything. But to be productive is what I assume, probably like any other language, will take a month or two to get at least your foot in the door. To be an expert like anything else, 3 to 5 years, but you can start working more quickly than that. All right, let's see. How to deal with freelancing in small countries such as Sweden. I don't know. Again, I think the same principles apply as I teach. Just apply them there. You may have to reach out. You're in Sweden, so I think you have access to all of Europe, so that's something to consider. I'll put in Luke's comment here. C++ is so cool. Yeah, well, C++ does have its cool factor, is no question about that. Let me increase my ISO a little bit. Let me try. Okay. Stefan Meshik, you were to start a greenfield project right now without worrying about time to market. What technology would you be looking for? What is a greenfield project? I don't know what that is. Sorry. Let's see what this guy has to say. Green Hattiger. So I am a computer student, but I find myself learning better by myself. I always find myself knowing more than my teachers. Should I stay in university or leave? Ooh, that's a hard question. Is university free? Is it free or not? That's the first thing I would wonder about. If it's free for you, then maybe you should stay just for contacts and getting that piece of paper. Do you think you might want to be working for a very large business, very large corporation? If you have credentials, then you have open more doors, although that's becoming less and less and less. Damn, I thought the tech lead was joking when he made the hacking coronavirus video. I didn't see that, so I know of him, but I don't know much about him. All right, so let me just talk about debugging skills and how if I was the head of the government or in the government, this is what I would suggest. Not that I know anything. I'm just using universal bugging to principles. One of the reasons software should be modular, you have our database modules, our views, our authentication modules. Why do we separate things like that? Why is there object-oriented programming? Because we've learned over the years that to have a system made up of independent modules that are relatively simple is much better, much easier to maintain, much easier to debug than a huge system that's, you have all the codes very complicated. So what you want to have basically in a larger piece of software, you want to have smaller co-independent pieces of software that are independent of each other, but they share a common language of communication and they share a common structure. That's what an MVC, a model view controller framework, a typical framework like a Django, Ruby Rails, Python, PHP Laravel, Java Spring. One of the reasons you use a framework is that they've defined these standards for you, so you can start building up your app pretty quickly with a defined standard, so that when the next coder comes in, and let's say you built it with Java Spring, you say we built it with Java Spring. If they know Spring, they're going to know basically how your app is structured if you stick to the standard. So that's one of the reasons why in programming we have our modules. Why? So it's easier to update, easier to expand upon, and easier to debug because you can track down your bugs more quickly. So it's the isolation of variables is the key to all of this. Simplification, isolation of variables. So we know with this coronavirus, we know that it affects largely people who are older and who have pre-existing condition, are very overweight and heart problems, diabetes, etc. So you want to relaunch the economy, and you're looking for a way to do this because that's doing a lot of damage to people as it's shut down. A lot of people are struggling. What you do is you first step, you go, okay, first thing we could say is people who are older and people who are sick, these are the people who have to stay quarantined. Boom. We know that people under 40, chances are, they don't die unless they have pre-existing conditions. So those are the first people you can put out to work, right? So you're isolating variables. Next thing you can do is you say it's proximity. Close proximity is a factor, right? We're isolating a variable, be in close proximity. So what you do is say, okay, people who work outside, who don't come in close contact with people on a normal basis, they're the first people you can start letting out to work, right? Also, we know that it's spread, through breath, through breathing, etc. So everybody wears masks, everybody wears gloves. You get the idea. So by isolating your variables, figuring out where the problem cases are, then you could come up with a system to more safely, nothing's guaranteed, launch everything, launch the economy. This is where the 80-20 rule comes in, the famous 80-20 rule, which is the Pareto principle. I think it's like a 15th century economist out of Italy, 15th or 16th century, and he figured out that something like 80% of the wealth in Italy was derived from 20% of the families. You kind of look at that in terms of the virus. It looks like 80% of deaths or the people who are really heavily impacted by the virus are found in only 20% of that population. So it's a great principle. You isolate that 20%. And you get a lot of traction out of that. I used to do that in business, by the way. You identify in business what product is making most of your sales. And I remember doing all the math of my business way back in the day, 200 years ago. And I did all the math and I figured out, and it actually came out to be 80-20. It was like 20% of my products accounted for 80% of the profits in the business. And on the flip side, I found that 20% of my cost, 20% of my expenses made up 80% of my costs. So it's kind of a universal principle. So I went off on a tangent here, but I felt compelled to do that. Anyway, so that's the end of that. So let's just jump into some more questions. I think you can also code Excel via COM objects in C#. Yes, that's true. VBA is actually a super neat language. I've actually done a lot of COM development back in the day. The most interesting I did was in the late 90s. Microsoft had this technology called HTA, Hypertext Application. They pioneered that and allowed Internet Explorer to basically access COM on Windows. So I actually developed applications for big pharmaceuticals, in fact, using that technology. So you would just have to name your page.hta and it would unlock all kinds of capabilities in the browser. You could access Windows COM objects. So yeah. All right. I've been coding PHP for about a month and I find my files being unorganized. Well, you got to learn to organize. My question is, what frameworks would you recommend for PHP and JavaScript? PHP, I would go with Laravel, and good thing for you, Laravel comes with Vue.js, which is my recommended JavaScript framework. So there you go. You're ready to go. All right. Loa Media says, yes, we have a monument for Pareto and Genoa IT. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so that's it. There you go. Thanks for looking at Wilfred per 1848, 1923. Okay, so I was off by a couple hundred years. That's happened. You get older, 100 years, 200 years, all the same thing, you know. What do you think of Jordan Peterson? He's cool. I have nothing against him. I know it's become political because he cites, he's a clinician. Well, not a clinician, or is he? Anyway, he's a psychologist. He cites studies and people have their opinions, but I haven't read his stuff, but you know, I generally have, he's Canadian, he's into psych, so I'm kind of biased that way. That's the extent of that. Eduardo, repeating question here, sorry, do you think I can do freelance in any language that I want or should use mainstream stack? Let the market tell you what the market tell you. You know, as I said, once I got a little bit more mature in my freelance career, I would just use whatever technology stack that the client required. Sometimes it would be Java, sometimes PHP, sometimes .NET, sometimes all kinds of different things. You'd be surprised, weird languages, you know. What does Luke say? All right. I have Automate Excel, Microsoft Word, etc., all for PowerShell. PowerShell can call any .NET class, so I know it is possible. COM objects are great, does not work with Edge, only IE though. Really? That's interesting. Is that the new Edge or the old Edge? Because they just recently gutted the engine. I'm guessing with the new Edge, because if they put in the Google engine, maybe that's why it doesn't work. How can I build my portfolio website without projects? You can. You can first build a really nice looking site, but then I would reach out to clients, do a couple of free ones. I'm telling you that it has a huge impact in terms of how well you're able to market yourself. Okay. What is the difference between your web designer and web developer course? The only difference is that the web developer, I get into back-end coding with SQL and PHP and databases, whereas the web designer is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it's basically everything that you have in a web designer course, you get into the web developer course, and you just learn full stack. Web developer course is basically full stack. Blank screen education. What approach would you suggest for going over technical documents faster, like data sheets, for example? I don't know. For me, as I just read more and more of those things, I just got better at it and faster at it, because what you're going to see, especially you go from language to language or framework to framework, you're going to start seeing a lot of commonalities. So for example, if you're going from Java and you're going to, let's say, I want to learn C#, and you're just getting acquainted with the C# language for the first time, you're not going to need to have to go over all the detailed specifications of object orientation in C++. You're just going to have to scan that and see what's different, right? I don't know if that helps. We'll see what else we got here. I cannot read that. I don't know what that means. All right. Is it worth tailoring your CV for your dream company or make side projects on their stack? Do both. Do both. If you're starting a new greenfield project that implements IoT, ML, and web stack, and you have full control of what are the combination of technologies you'd go for. I don't know what greenfield project is, so I can't comment on that. I can't, sorry, but I would just let the market decide. Is that a drum set in the background? It is indeed. It is. I played drums for fun for many years. But yeah. Salam Ali. I am comfortable with serverless in GSP, but don't know if it has demand or not. Well, look at the job market. Look at the job market. And if it doesn't, then you should I get a coffee or you are ending the stream soon? Well, I was planning on ending this at about 30 minutes. It's at 25 now, but I no promises, but I tend to always extend them longer, but I have no promises. Up to you. You can always watch the replay. Here we go. Quick Zed. What tips can you give for mentoring someone inexperienced? Give them small projects to work on their own at first, small projects. And then when they do a little small project for you, look at what they've done, critique what they've done with constructive criticism, and then give them more small projects. And then as they get better and better, you keep adding more and more projects or more difficult projects. And make sure, if you find, for example, if they're weak on something, if they're weak on, let's say, I don't know, their design patterns, just tell them, you got to learn a little bit about design patterns, go here and learn it there, etc. So that's how I would do it. Carthay, would you ever show us your drum skills? If you go to Instagram, you can scroll through I have a short video of me playing a pattern on drums. You can check that out there. Ahmed Kun, would you recommend Golang as a second language? Meh, why not? Try it out. I always say, look at the job opportunities. What do you think about test-driven development and unit tests in general? I think they're cool after you have a pretty well-established use case and your code base is fairly solid, because in the initial alpha stages that you're writing code, your system is going to be changing quite a bit. So you don't want to have to be continuously rewriting your unit test. Can you suggest a good resource for learning Laravel? You know what? I think if you're comfortable with your basics and basic concepts, there's a bunch out there. I think there's Laracast is one. I haven't looked at him in years. He's got a lot of material. I don't know if he teaches well. That's the thing. There's a difference between putting out a lot of tutorials versus teaching really well. I find there's some people who put out lots and lots of tutorials, but they don't really know how to teach, and I have other people who can actually put out good teaching material. Teaching is a skill, by the way. It's a skill set. It requires a certain talent. It's different from being a developer. Who is your favorite MMA fighter of all time or around now? One of my favorites was Anderson Silva, just because his style was fun to watch. I like Connor. Connor's cool. He's, I can do without his. He's a big performer. We know he's putting on his act, but I like his fighting style. It's fun to watch. I don't like the ground and pound guys. They're kind of boring. Take them down, hit. It's like, whatever. I like guys who are more technical and more flamboyant, like Connor and like Anderson Silva. Hi, I love to code for myself or with friends in open projects, but can't motivate myself to do a job for my boss. Some tips. Whew. So I tell you, your boss is not, it's just letting you not, is your boss letting you sit there and not do anything? Is that what you're telling me? I don't know. Money is a good motivator. Or maybe just start building your own thing, Start building your own thing. Trying to move up from .NET web forms to at work, best course of action. What do you mean, move up in terms of technical or move up in terms of job-wise, All right. Akash. Hi, Stefan. What should I learn between React.js and Vue.js? Let the jobs market dictate. For me, with StudioWeb 5, I chose Vue to implement Vue simply because I preferred it over React for technical reasons. But again, if there's no jobs in Vue where you happen to be, then you're probably better off using React. They're both fine. Does your course go over website deployment and some DevOps? I just teach you how to get it online. I teach you basic server. basic hosting, that kind of stuff. I don't get into DevOps because then you can explore that. My courses are designed to give you, I teach you how to read and write, and then from there you can read and write anything you want. So I teach you the basics so that you can then jump into any type of DevOps that you want afterwards. Yeah. Come on, Steph. Bring on home with the drums, pun intended. Good song, good song. Deep space. Which language can be used for automation, AI, say for farming and doing it automatically? I would probably go with Python. All right, what else we got here? Hey, Steph, do you recommend specializing in front end or back end as opposed to being average but full stack? Again, as usual, my usual comment is to let the market help you decide that. Also, depending on what you prefer to do, I think that if you want to become a specialist, that's where you would find yourself working for bigger organizations who will recognize the skills of specialists. If you're going to be working for smaller companies, freelancing, then you want to be a generalist and you want to go with full stack if I were you. What do you think about data-oriented design compared to OOP? You know what? This was asked recently, and data-oriented design is not something I looked at. I just read a bit about it. It's something done in gaming, so I have no clear comment on that. I would have to look into that and get back to you. So I haven't done data-oriented design, so that's basically where I'm going to leave that for now. Exactly. I feel like I learned magic. Oh, I don't know what he's referring to. Jancy Foxhound. Okay. Let's see what Eric has to say. I'm working at a large company at age 20-year-old doing Java Spring Boot. Okay. They are training me. That's great. And I was wondering if I should go back to college or will experience be enough for me? I would do college on the side because you already got a job at a large company at 20 years old and they're training you. You're going to learn much more working at that company work that you will learn in school. And if you're already in a large company and they hired you, like I have a friend of mine who that's what happened to him. He was going to university, got hired by a company, low-level job, not even coder, but lower than that. And he just kept rising and rising and rising. And he eventually never finished his university degree. And now he's like the top guy. He's like one of the top guys in the organization making well over $300K a year, so no university degree. Not bad. Okay, I read that. Let me scroll down a little bit more. I'm going to jump ahead. Which Python online course do you recommend? How to build a portfolio in others to be hired, specifically bioinformatics and modeling. Well, if you're new to programming, I recommend, of course, my Python course because it's interactive and because it's mine. And I think you'll learn a ton there, and I think you'll see that in the reviews. And then after that, you will be open to be able to look into all these different specializations. I actually talk about that in my course. I have Python specializations videos where I discuss what you can do with Python, which direction to go in, depending on your personal interest. Said, I deployed my first official Flask app to Python Anywhere today. Congratulations. Fantastic. Feels good, eh? And, comment said, how much did you learn deploying your very first app? You probably learned a lot more than you figured. You should have a sign ready with the text, let the market decide. Yeah, you're right. I got to come up with a series of videos where I say, refer to the Steph Basics library. I would save some time, perhaps. Mark Powell. Steph, do you own any other website you've built that earn you side income? No mention of URLs, just curious. Oh, yeah, a few. I got several websites that are still up there. They're just kind of stagnant, if you will. I haven't had time to address them. But yeah, I've had dating sites, information hubs where I made money on ads. I've done, of course, online learning. I find myself in online learning just because, I guess it's in the family and we're all teachers. So Kind of makes sense. And okay, okay. Let's see. How do you know which language dominated your area? Are you supposed to look for 100 jobs and draw a conclusion? It feels like where I live, Java Spring and C Sharp are dominant, but not sure Sweden. Yes, you look at the jobs listings. You can do articles. There's surveys in terms of languages, and they talk about geographic regions, all these things, and you get a pretty clear idea. That being said, even if your area of the world is dominated by Java, it doesn't stop you from getting a iOS developer job there. It could happen. I'm sure there's people doing iOS development, etc. Right? See, one of my goals with this channel is to teach everybody that you don't want to be bound to a particular tech. You want to open up the opportunities here, right? And so that you can just do whatever needs to be done at the time. If you can get out of that mindset, it's like that's what the MMA guys figured out, right? Instead of I'm a karate guy and a kung fu guy, or I'm just stand up, or I'm just ground, they evolved. They realized you got to be a bit of everything with your specialization, and you have the most opportunity to win the fight. Same thing with coding and business. Thanks. I learned so much. That's sad. He's talking about building his first app. I learned so much. I know how to push and pull from and to GitHub. Fantastic. There you go. You see what I mean? That's why I want people to get through the basics, the foundations quickly as possible. Learn some basic principles, good coding practices, and then just build. That's how you're going to learn. Let's see what Saint Mixin has to say. Steph, I am interested in robotics, good with physics, but assembly languages seem intimidating. Yeah, nobody likes assembly. I think the world is not ready yet for robotic evolution, but will 100% entangled. But will be 100% entangled in politics. Yeah, well, if you look back in history, you see that every so often economies change quite a bit based on technology changes. You know, at one point, whale oil used to power lamps around the world, right? No more. You know, at one point, everybody had typewriters. You know, that disappeared. So you're going to have to navigate that, but robotics is a good place to be in. There's no question about that. All right. Let's see what Adam has to say. What do you recommend for a second dev job that's different from the first job? Do I still need a portfolio? Well, once you got portfolio, your job experience is part of the portfolio. When I talk about portfolios, I'm talking about just job experience where you can show, hey, look, this is what I've done. You know, again, let the market decide. Also, you may want to delve into an area in the technology space that's interesting to you or may have a lot of opportunity. Let's see what it is. Are Ajax and JSON important in freelance web development? Not important, but it's there. Again, if you know how to code, you can learn Ajax and JSON in about an hour. So it's not a big deal. Did you read Bob Martin's book, Clean Code? I have not, but I've heard of Bob Martin. Did you ever use Azure for deployment? No, I considered it. I use, in terms of clouds, I use DigitalOcean right now, simply because I have been for years. No other reason. How do I stop running away from my code errors? How do I stop running away from my code errors? Do they scare you? I'm not sure. Tell me what you mean by that, bloodthirsty. Eduardo Vittorino. Stefan, do you think that architecture patterns is useful for freelancing? Yes, because they will help you design apps much more quickly and more cleanly, which will be easy for you to build. Jancy Foxhelm. Hey, Steph, what do you think about Symfony? I haven't looked at it in years. I heard it's very good. I just prefer Laravel personally. In my new work, I've been told that Laravel is overkill for small to medium-sized projects, so I have to learn Symfony. Why not? Just learn it. Every time you learn something new, it just helps. It's like bodybuilding, right? It's like if you were a martial arts or jiu-jitsu practitioner, if you went to another school, jiu-jitsu school, to learn from another black belt's point of view, there's nothing but gain in that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Pedro Jose, what backend language or platform would be really efficient to deploy on PaaS? I mean, low resource consumption. That's interesting. I would stay away from Python. I would stay away from Ruby because they require a lot of juice. I'm not sure what a PaaS is, but low resource platform. That's what I can say for now. I don't know if it's web you're talking about or not, but server-side versus client-side rendering. It depends what it is. I am somebody who kind of sides with server-side, perhaps simply because that's what I've been doing for so long. The reason I do server-side is because servers are so powerful. One of the big advantages of pushing the rendering to the client is that you offload the processing to the client. But in many situations, server-side rendering, servers rather today are so powerful, and what you have to render, most servers can easily handle it. And the advantage of server-side rendering is that it is secure. It's much more secure. Whereas when you're client-side rendering, you have to push everything there. So there's a bandwidth issue as well. When you server-side render, you can server-side render, process on the server, and then send the minimal amount of information to the client, so you save on bandwidth. So it might be better for mobile situations. Those are the considerations, but that's a judgment call, really. Where to find your Python course, and does it cover data science and AI? It covers the foundations. I don't go into data science because I'm not a data scientist. I don't cover AI, but you will be very well prepared to jump into that pretty easily. You can find it on school.studioweb.com/store. Look underneath any of my videos. There's a link to it. I am sure you will like it. Alexei Gorbachev, do you drink alcohol? Rarely. I'm not a big drinker. It's just not in my DNA, but I do have craft beer every now and then. In the winter, I hardly ever have it. Maybe once every 3 months, I'll have a few beers. In the summer, I have it a little bit more often because it's hot out, but I'm just lucky for me. I have no addiction to alcohol or drugs. For me, I'm a foodie. Olivier David Sigan, how important are design principles like solid and web? I think they're very important. I think understanding good design principles will just allow you to write better code. So that's my general feeling about that, All right. How long will it take me to learn Laravel? I know PHP very well, but switched to Node about a year ago because of my job. You could probably learn Laravel fairly well within a few days. You should be able to do stuff. All right. See what else we got here. Costas, what's he has to say? How do you avoid unnecessary downtime during development when you recompile a big code-based project? IntelliSense and static typing can only go so far. Yeah, that's a good architecture. What I would do is again, it comes back to what I was talking about earlier in this broadcast about isolating the components in your system so that you don't, when you do a recompile, you're not just doing everything. You're doing, one component at a time. So that's how I would look at that. I use dynamic languages. We use dynamic, PHP and JavaScript, so we don't have that as an issue these days. That's another, Travis Bickle. PHP best framework is PHP the best framework for freelance job? Generally speaking, I would say PHP number one, JavaScript followed by Python. Simply, it's market share issues and speed of development issues. Flutter looks like a lucrative prospect, especially once Google Fuchsia OS is released. I think Flutter has, it's got something about it. My instinct about Flutter was that it's very positive, Anecdotally, and I haven't used it, but anecdotally it looks like something that has a future, but we shall see. What do you think about creating a personalized homepage website app with Google search on it, links to best favorite websites, great UX, designed to replace a boring Google as a homepage? Are you talking about creating a separate site, but you would develop it, you would just incorporate Google search? Is that what you're saying? Eduardo Vitorino. I'm having a hard time trying to be a stack agnostic. I think that is missing something in my formation. Well, it just comes with experience. If you're working with, I don't know, Node.js Express, do a freelance job with PHP Laravel, and then, you're going to first complain about PHP Laravel. And then you'll start to understand why they made certain decisions there, and you'll start to appreciate why they did certain things, and so on and so forth, Steph, do you recommend using Stack Overflow? Well, I recommend you just go to Google. And a lot of times Stack Overflow just comes up anyway, so that's what I do. Ali Shadow, hi Stefan. As you know, data scientists are in high demand, but what is their future comparison with developers? I don't think they're going anywhere, but you have to be a data scientist, right? I don't think you can take a data scientist course online and become a data scientist. I think it's a profession, right? But I could be wrong about that. Both are good. How can we better our OOP concepts? Well, he's saying how can we become more, cognizant, understand OOP better by writing code. That's what you do. Write code. It's like if you want to learn to fight, you fight. I was a much better fighter after I had 20 fights versus 5 fights, and so on and so forth. Blasi, that already exists in multiple Chrome extensions. I don't know, he's talking about something. Hold on. How do you keep motivated to keep your YouTube channel and also to build your courses? YouTube for me is my hobby. It's also been good for marketing. It's my hobby. Right now we're in maintenance right now with the StudioWeb app. We just did a huge, big update to the app, and we have a new certification engine. I haven't released them then because of COVID. But YouTube for me is just fun, although it has good business advantages as well. How to deal with amateur coders and their overcomplicated way to write code. There you go. I like that line. Their overcomplicated way to write code. Something I talk about. The difference between experienced developers and beginners is the experienced developers strive to write simple code, and noobs strive to end up writing complex code and makes them feel good. But simple code is the way to go. Well, you just have to tell them, better write simple code. It's part of the training. I want to switch from native Android to iOS, but I feel like when I would have wasted time doing Android all this time and abandoning it just to switch to something else. No, it's you're gonna be able to draw from your Android experience to write better iOS apps. And who knows? Try it out. You may find that you prefer iOS programming. Do you have a favorite band? It depends on my mood, right? Depends on my mood. I'm all over the place. How do you quit a job without burning bridges? Well, you say, I'm looking to expand my career, and I want to advance, and I really like the experience, the opportunity you gave me here, but I want to move, and I want to learn this and this and this and that, or I have more opportunity to move up there. So I really appreciate working with you. It's been a great situation, something to that effect. Most people understand that. How are we doing for time here? Oh, 50 minutes. Jeez. These streams go by fast. Says, how often do you live stream? I've been doing a lot of live streams recently, but it's a very recent thing. I don't know if I'm going to keep doing it daily. Possibly, but I think I'm going to try and keep them under 49 minutes, that's for sure. I'm trying to bring them down to more like 30 minutes. There you go. If you had no money and you know a little Python, in this current situation, how would you proceed to feed? I would reach out to companies maybe looking for Python scripters. They want to automate their backend system, their servers. If you can't find that, I would look into getting into the web stack and start doing some basic web jobs for people, freelancing. That's the quickest way to monetizing your Python skills. Dirty Derp CGI Main. How do you recommend building a resume when you recently changed from an unrelated field, have no degree or tech experience? That's one of those videos I got to put out there. Steph's fundamental tips. I tell people you get your fundamentals down, you put up a good looking website. If you don't know how to design, use templates. Make sure it looks really good because people are going to judge you based on how good it looks, and make sure it's well written, well laid out, good design, aesthetically pleasing. And then go to Google Maps in your area and look for local businesses and approach them. Say, listen, I want to develop some experience building sites. I'm willing to update your site, build a new site for you for free. And you run through the whole process of working with an actual client to build their sites. And then you're going to gain experience, build your resume, start building goodwill with local businesses. And guess what? Small business owners know other small business owners, and you'll find yourself getting into work. All right, guys, I think that's it for now. 51 minutes I've been talking. And yeah, I got other things I got to take care of. I hope. Yeah, this guy's right. Saint Mixin. Hey, guys, take it easy on the old man. We must preserve him as best we can. Yeah. Getting pretty old here. So I think that's it for now. Yeah, hit the like button if you like this broadcast. Let me know. This is a long one. So that's it for now. So what are we? Tuesday? Okay, so I'll probably do another one tomorrow. You could also catch me on Instagram. If you want to learn more about my material, my content, look on the links below or under any of the videos. And you should look at my back catalog on YouTube. I got over 1,500 videos there. So some of them are older, but some of them are still very, very, very relevant for today. All right. I'm happy. I'm just going to answer this guy. I see it. Thanks for the show. I'm happy you liked the show, and thanks for watching. We will talk soon.